All over Britain, there are archaeological sites that are too dangerous to access or excavate. They could contain unique and valuable evidence of our past, which, if not investigated, will be lost forever. EXA is a team of highly skilled archaeologists. Katie Hurst, in charge of excavation. Alice Roberts, doctor and expert in human bones. Meg Waters, geophysicist and digital imaging specialist. All experts in their chosen fields who are determined to get into these inhospitable places to forensically assess, survey and extract the evidence. The expedition leader will be me, Mark Davis, volcanologist, climber, caver and diver. This is Archaeology on the very edge. This week we delve in deep beneath a Scottish castle, investigating legends of smugglers and cannibals. What we find proves to be far more mysterious. This is Culzean Castle in Ayrshire, Scotland, perched precariously on a cliff above the Firth of Clyde. 100 feet below me is an impressive fortification that barricades the entrance to a mysterious cave complex. Inside there's several chambers, complete with walls, doors, even windows, so someone built them for a very specific reason. EXA's objective is to unravel some of the mysteries associated with this magnificent monument. Culzean Castle, built in 1780 by Robert Adam in the Scottish baronial style, stands on the site of a much earlier medieval castle. The fortifications below were already here when Adam began his building works. But no record exists of when or why they were built. In the 1960s, a group of cavers carried out some amateur excavations inside the cave complex. They apparently found lots of animal bones and broken glass. Not exactly earth-shattering, but valuable dating evidence nonetheless. One of the broken glass bottles had an inscribed date and place. Culzean, 1741, an archaeologist's dream find. Unfortunately, all of the cavers' finds have now been lost. We've been invited here to undertake a forensic investigation of the caves. Alice is going to try and find more bones. Meg's faced with the daunting task of surveying the entire cave. And Katie is going to open up some small test pits to try and understand the archaeology. But first, they have to get down to the site.
It's going to be a drop of about 1.5 feet as the rope reaches the lip.
It is possible to get to the cave system by following a cliff-top path down into an adjacent bay and then scrambling over that headland and this one. However, we've already had one near accident, so I've asked the delivery team to come up with a rope access system to ferry all the archaeologists and the equipment down to the excavation site. The route around the rocks only applies at low tide. At high tide, the cave complex is completely cut off. We're going to need access all hours.
Oh my God, it's a bit stretchy. Oh, Jesus.
As a safety precaution, we've anchored their ropes to our Land Rover and protected the soft sandstone castle from unnecessary erosion.
We've got to do the splits. The window. Oh, yeah, coming.
When you are going, fully open.
Abseiling gives the team a bird's eye view of the site and the opportunity to look for any surface finds.
Aha! A cup. Not very old at all. Pretty recent. Something that's fallen out of the kitchen, I think. Just looks like cliffs at the moment. Oh, a bunch of windows. Oh, there's a little window here. Yeah. Well, this is just like a proper building now, isn't it? How strange. It's almost like it's sort of emerged out of the rock. Grown out of it. Right.
We are planning to throw the technological kitchen sink at this excavation, with the very latest in 3D laser scanners, next generation ground penetrating radar and television microwave links. Consequently, we've got several hundred kilos of very expensive kit to get down there, preferably all in one piece. So rather than risk a fall on the rocks or being cut off at high tide, it's all going to be lowered and raised by zipline. The cave complex consists of 3 known chambers, covering an area of almost 800 square metres. All of the evidence points to them being used as a storage cellar for the castle above. But during the 16th and 17th centuries, the Esher coast was terrorised by gangs of smugglers. Local legend has it that the caves were used as headquarters for the smugglers under the control of the Dukes of Culzean. Legends also tell of secret passages coming down from the castle into the caves, but it's likely that all traces of the passages, if they ever existed, were destroyed during Robert Adams' building works.
So this is really a really substantial structure, isn't it?
It's a proper building, isn't it?
It looks like it, but it may be the same material as the castle, but it looks like the stones are smaller.
There's more than one story, isn't there? You've got the door there with the modern bars in front of it, and then you've got another window up there, and then right up there's at least 2 windows, and then there's a small hole up there. I can't wait to see.
There's been an iron gate bar in the lower entrance for over 30 years. So apart from the occasional official castle visitor, an unofficial vandal, everything inside should be as the 1960s cavers left it.
It's dark in the back. Yeah, it is.
Come on in, girls. God, this is vast.
So that door was incredibly low that we just came through. Do you think the ground floor is just filled up with rubble? And that it would have
Yeah, could well be.
for somebody who just walked in.
Could well be.
So the rumours are that this was a smuggler's cave then, are they?
A smuggler's cave,
Yeah.
and what we've got to find out, what we've got to establish, is do these smugglers' caves go up to the castle?
Katie, this is Mark. Katie, this is Mark. Comms check, over.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's great. That's coming through loud and clear. Is the GIS tablet there?
Yeah, I've got it in my case.
Oh, great.
One of our first objectives is to work out whether these caves were actually used by the smugglers. And so we want to know if the walls in front of the cave are contemporary with the smugglers. So I'm going to put a trench in the entranceway, and if we can find any small bits of evidence, like glass or pottery, that will tell us the date of the walls, that's going to be great. And the other target that we really need to work on is, can you see these two pillars here on the map?
Yeah, got them.
These are pillars in Chamber B, and we've got to find out whether they're medieval, because they could actually have been built by Robert Adam when he was building the modern castle, but they may be medieval as well.
And that's where there were previous excavations, is that right?
Yeah, there was a trench in there put in the 1960s,
Right.
but they had to stop
Yeah.
because a ginormous spider fell into their trench and they were too scared to carry on.
Katie, I don't like spiders.
And then what Meg is going to do is some survey work inside the cave, so that she might be able to pick up some internal walls and other features like pits and fireplaces.
Right, what I'm actually going to start with is ground penetrating radar. And we're going to use a high frequency antenna that should see maybe 2 meters down into the bottom of the cave. And of course, when we look up in here, I have to drag my antenna over the surface, and it has to maintain contact with the ground. So you see all this rubble and the boulders. We'll have to move all of this to the side somewhere.
But I think what we have to do before we move the rocks is to make sure that we're not putting the rocks over some archaeologically sensitive area.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if we do a quick scan first of the cave to find if there's any surface archaeology first, and then we'll start moving the boulders.
Sounds good?
This rock here, this is a little big. I don't think we'll have to move this one. I can work around it. But all this other stuff
Around in here, the rubbly, even some of the larger ones and the wood up here. I think it'd be good we could just toss it off to the side.
There's also a log inside.
The floor of the cave appears to be covered with small boulders, old driftwood, and the remains of what look like dry stone walls.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, and these rocks do look like they've been just shoved in here purposefully, and it's not rockfall.
You think it's all been infilled there?
I think this is a wall right in front of me, deliberately built to shut off the other side.
I mean, there's actually just pieces of archaeology just lying on the surface here. There's quite a lot of bone. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, so that's an animal bone. Can you see that, Mark?
Yeah, I got that. What is it, an animal bone? How do you know that?
Well, from its morphological features. I'll tell you exactly which animal it comes from a bit later. But basically, the shape of the joint here is totally different from any sort of human bone, so it's definitely an animal. And I'll have a good look at it and tell you what species it comes from later.
There's lots of bone here.
There's a little bit there. It's probably all bits and pieces of
what's
animal.
that?
Right. Okay, folks, right. This is a human vertebra.
A human vertebra?
You're joking.
No, I'm not joking. That is a human thoracic vertebra.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm deadly serious. This was the last thing I was expecting to find in this cave.
What on earth is a human bone doing in this cave?
I don't know. Is there anything else there?
Oh, just sitting here.
There's more bits of bone. Is that?
Where did you get it from?
I got it from just there. I think at this point I'm going to have to put all this back. We're going to have to call the police because we've got human bone.
This single piece of bone looks like it's going to turn all of our theories upside down. Our smugglers are now looking like murderers. We came to Culzean Castle to look for evidence of smugglers, but we appear to have found evidence of something far more sinister.
Hello? Hello, yeah, is that Maybold Police Station? Hi, yeah, my name is Mark Davis. I'm on an archaeological dig at Culzean Castle. Yeah, no, not the castle itself, but actually down in the cave system. Yeah, well, what it is, we've unearthed some human bones in the cave itself. No, we're absolutely positive because we've got an osteoarchaeologist on the team, yeah.
Yeah, it's in that pit there, isn't it? So basically, we haven't done any digging at all. They were just looking through to that gully there.
These are animal bones here.
Yeah.
And this is the human vertebra.
You know, it's obviously not a body. It's not in situ. It's sort of mixed up with animal bones.
Anything, yes.
The local police got here pretty quickly, and it was just as well that it was low tide. The delivery team got them in safe and sound. But at the moment, they worried that the bones could be part of a murder, and this is a scene of crime. Hopefully, Alice will put them straight.
You know, as I said to you, I've done quite a lot of work on forensic sites as well, and I'm convinced of its antiquity. So,
are you likely to find anything else?
We're going to. I mean, the plan would be to excavate this area here just to see what is going on with that collection of bone.
As I said earlier on, our CID are away, right? We have to do that. That's procedures.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
We've been told to preserve the integrity of the so-called crime scene. So, while we wait for the CID to arrive, Meg and Katie take the opportunity to explore and survey another chamber. Almost 50 metres in from the outer fortifications, the entrance is through a partially blocked stone doorway. We need to find out if the natural rock of the chamber has been enhanced or modified by man. The easy way, given the pitch darkness, is to use lasers.
We're actually using a laser scanner. It's a laser beam, and what we're doing is measuring the cave in 3D. If we come over to the computer, we can look at the screen. Okay, so what you can see are actual data points, because I've zoomed way into the data since we're collecting at a resolution of about 0.5 centimeter. And you can see each individual point. Now these are going to show us distance.
So all these points are the points going to
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you zoom out.
I will show you.
Whoa.
Right. And we can rotate our image and see the cave and where we are within it.
So even as we speak, you can actually fly around the cave
Yeah,
already.
that's what I'm doing.
So if we want to look from the perspective where we're standing, I can rotate this around, and we are standing right here, looking back at the far wall.
Okay.
You can see their little black spots, but that's where we have shadows, right? So that's why we have to have about 30 setups in the cave, because if you have a rock sticking up, we scan the front of the rock and its dimensions, but we don't actually see the back of the rock or what's behind it because it casts a shadow.
The CIRAC survey clearly shows that this chamber has only been enhanced by the addition of a stone doorway. So what could it have been used for? A dungeon? A wine cellar? Maybe even a strong room? Unfortunately, there appears to have been a recent roof collapse covering the floor with boulders and over a metre of mud. We've not the time or resources to shift several hundred tons of spoil. 3D laser scanning can also be used on a much larger scale, providing a view of Culzean accurate to within a few millimetres. That's impossible to achieve by normal film or television means. Inside the pillar chamber, official Culzean archaeologist Derek Alexander gave me a guided tour of the fortifications.
What struck me was how thick the walls were.
Yeah, I mean, the walls at the front of the caves here are really well built, and we think they belong probably to the 16th century by the type of construction, the shape of the windows, all that sort of thing. But yeah.
The other thing I found quite curious was these pillars. It's just a jumbled up mixture of different rocks which appear to have been just grabbed from the beach.
I think you're right there. I mean, you can see that it really is roughly built, and there are in fact one or two dress stones that have been reused in here, probably from the original works. And we think that these are a later build, probably to do with Robert Adam at the time he built the castle above in 1777, the big house.
Yeah.
And because he built this lovely big house, and he then suddenly realised, wait a minute, it's on top of these caves. What I don't want is my fantastic masterpiece to disappear into the middle of these caves. So he built, we think, these pillars to hold up the roof in some shape or form, although how good a job they're doing is debatable. What would be good to do would be to excavate a trench at the base of one of these, and maybe get some dating evidence from underneath to look at the foundations of them, see what they're built on, see if there's any dating evidence underneath.
Just seen fresher bones in there.
Yes, so right.
The local CID have arrived and have examined our site. They're pretty much convinced of the antiquity of the human bones.
I've also got a photographer coming.
Right, okay. And we'll obviously be taking photographs as we excavate anyway, so.
Detective Sergeant Farrell has his own theory as to how the bones may have got into the cave.
It's a local legend in this part of Ayrshire. Several hundred years ago, there was a family lived here near the village of Ballantrae, which is some miles south of here. And their claim to fame is that they waylaid passers-by, and were in fact a family of cannibals, and the leader of the family was called Sonny Bean.
So was there actually evidence for that? Or was it just a rumour?
Yes, to the best of my recollection, they were actually caught by the then militia and were executed. I believe it was early 1600s.
Well, it'd be quite interesting to take this bone out. What I'll do is take it out of the cave, clean it up. We'll have a look at it under the microscope and see if we can see any evidence of cut marks, which might show us that there was butchery or cannibalism going on, possibly. And then, when I've done that, I'll hand it over to you, because you've got to take it back to headquarters, haven't you?
Yeah, we'll have to carry out our own examination.
Okay.
Okay.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So instead of our smuggling story, we appear to have a possible historical murder mystery on our hands. But by finding the bones, we've lost the best part of a whole day's excavation. We've brought in more light to the cave, and it's now clear that the vertebrae were lying in a small pit, a shallow grave, or the remains of the 1960s cavers' excavation. Alice's first task is to carefully retrieve any more bone fragments that may be lying on the surface. 5 or 6 immediately become apparent. Bean is sieving the muddy soil from around the pit, looking for more fragments.
Yep.
I've done that bit of sieving.
Great.
Quite difficult because the mud's all wet.
Yeah.
But I did find what I think look like bone.
Now that bone is part of the pubis of the immature pelvis, so it's the hip bone.
Okay.
And this is definitely an immature one, and that was a bit I found earlier. And if we're lucky, the two of those should actually fit together. So something like that.
Yeah.
That's where the sort of the midline would be, and your two pubic bones meet in the midline. There's a pubic symphysis.
So roughly how big would the animal have been?
This is a human.
Human?
Yeah.
I was hoping you weren't going to say that. Right.
So this is an infant. That's fantastic. And there's actually an infant vertebra as well. So we've got at least 2 individuals.
Make sure you weigh back.
We've now collected evidence from at least 2 individuals, 1 adult and 1 child. As our appointed licensee for the Home Office, Alice is required by law to prepare a detailed osteological report for the police. But first, she has to get back to base camp and find her toothbrush.
Right, Alice, tell me about the human bones. Most exciting find of the day, from my point of view.
Well, I'm amazed that we had human bones. It's absolutely stunning. This is the first one we found, and this is a human thoracic vertebra, so it's part of your spine.
Is there any foul play going on there?
Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it would have been quite intriguing, wouldn't it? Yeah. There's no evidence of cut marks or anything like that, and to disarticulate a vertebra from a fully fleshed body, you'd expect there to be cut marks, maybe taking the ribs off, things like this. And certainly there'd probably be cut marks through where the joints are, where you're trying to separate the vertebrae.
Okay, well, can we have a look at the wee one over there, the child one?
Yeah. So you can see it's a sort of similar shape, and you can see there's got these little sticky actrons as processes just there. Probably if we can pop this underneath the microscope, we can have a better look at those. We're interested in that bit there.
Why has the baby got those little features and not the adult then?
Because they start off as cartilage models, which most of the bones in your body do, and then you get bones sort of growing within the cartilage and replacing it. And with the vertebrae, you get that happening in 3 different main places, in the body itself, and in either side of the neural arch, which goes around the spinal cord at the back. And then the neural arch joins onto the body, but while it's joining, there'll be a sort of little join line, so that's exactly what we're looking at. So we can see that. Can you see that really nicely there?
Clearly.
Yeah. What we're seeing there is a gap that would have been infilled by cartilage. But the cartilage has obviously disappeared.
What sort of age
the
is the translation made?
It is during infancy, so it's probably about 4 or 5, but don't quote me on that. So.
Right, okay. Can we determine anything about the age of these things?
It certainly looks archaeological to me, and that obviously it's just the bone that's left there, so it's probably been in the ground for quite a long time.
Can we do carbon-14?
We can do carbon-14, so that would be what I would like to do post-X, is send it off to a carbon-14 dating lab.
7 pieces of disarticulated vertebra and pelvis from at least 2 individuals. But because they were found on the surface, they've not given us any archaeological clues as to how they got here. We're obviously going to have to dig much deeper. We came to caves beneath Culzean Castle to look for evidence of 18th century smugglers. But before any trenches could be dug, the team found human bones lying on the muddy surface of the cave floor.
This is a human vertebra.
The police were called and were satisfied that they were archaeological, not criminal. The discovery of the human bones has turned our plans and excavation schedule upside down. Because we urgently need to find out how the bones got into the cave, we've abandoned our plan to excavate in the doorway. We concentrate in our efforts in the main chamber, where back in the 60s, a group of cavers dug some amateur and apparently random trenches.
What we know is that in the 60s, some local cavers dug a few holes around these caves, and they found a culvert down.
What's a culvert?
It's like a drain. It's basically a drain that they think is running down through here. So it'd be really good to expose their trench and that culvert, because we still don't know about any features, any internal features within this cave at all. So if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Sure, if you mark up the trench for me, and then I'll shift some of the blocks.
Okay, but try not to get distracted by the geology. We're looking at the archaeology.
All right, okay.
The The cavers apparently found the drainage culvert about here. We found the human bones 10 metres away, towards the back of the chamber. As Katie starts work digging in the bone trench, I've been given the job of clearing the spoil from the cavers' culvert. With all of the loose rocks and rubbish removed, it's clear that the cavers were right. This is a drainage culvert, constructed of massive slabs of rock.
Top of the flagstone, you're looking at 62 centimetres.
A square-section stone-lined tube, designed to carry water away. And it looks like it's heading off up the cave towards the bone trench, where Katie and Alice are still finding fragments.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. No, that's not a human one.
Looks too wide, doesn't it?
It is, yeah. I'm not brilliant on phalanges. I'll take it up top and have a proper look at it and decide, but it's definitely not human.
Only a few centimetres below the cave floor, there appears to be a stone surface, with a tantalising void between the slabs. This must be the continuation of our culvert. Because the bones were found in the mud above, we have to look to the rock itself to perhaps give us dating evidence.
This is the culvert down to my culvert.
Yeah, it looks like the drain is running all the way from the back of the cave down to the front entrance there.
Okay.
And it's probably draining water.
Well, the first thing that strikes me is we're in a basalt cave.
Right.
And this is sandstone.
Right.
So this has come from somewhere else. And I guess from your point of view, you want to know whether this has been laid down at the same time that they built the castle. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, there's a quick and easy way of doing that. The castle itself is built out of sandstone that has a high calcareous content. That's why it's all pitted and looks as if it's weathered away. So if we drop some acid onto this rock, and if it fizzes...
You're not going to dissolve away my archaeology.
I'm afraid so, I'm afraid so. But if I drop some acid onto this rock and it dissolves away, that is indicative of high calcareous content.
Hydrochloric acid on calcareous sandstone does this. But on our sandstone block, no reaction.
Absolutely nothing at all. Nothing at all. So that tells me that these rocks have come from a different locality to the rocks that's up in the castle.
Right.
Completely different.
And are probably from a different age then?
Well, not from a different age geologically, but from archaeological point of view, yes, a different age.
Even though we've got two sections of culvert in our trenches, we can't assume that they join together in a straight line. We also need to understand if the massive underground structure is sitting on or cutting into an ancient floor surface. Ground-penetrating radar may provide the answer.
Perfect. Looks good.
Despite the excitement of the bone finds, we've not forgotten about the strange jerry-built pillars in Chamber 2, where local archaeologist Derek Alexander is digging a trench to try and find any dating evidence that will tell us when the pillars were built. Those 1960s cavers dug in here too. This is where they found most of the broken glass bottles and piles of bones, which were removed and subsequently lost. This is also the place the cavers encountered the ginormous spider. Self-confessed arachnophobe Alice decides to investigate.
He's running away.
Ever so carefully.
Oh, I'm sorry about this spider. Right, we're going to take you up top, have a quick look at you.
Not exactly ginormous, but big enough. Meta minardi, the common cave spider.
It's just about what we're looking for. But we're hoping that you're going to tell us what they are.
So, Derek, where's this coming from? Just we're digging there?
Yeah, it's all come from the backfill of the 1960s excavation trench.
Right. So
it's all mixed.
Do you think there's some kind of midden there then?
Yeah, I think it is, because there's shell and things behind me here and bits of broken pottery and things as well.
Right. So we'll take these back up top, clean them up, and have a look and see if we can sort of tell what the species are and whether they're sort of typical species you'd expect to find.
We'll be able to tell that any of it's been butchered and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we should be able to look for cut marks on them where the tendons were attached to the bones and things like that, and we can check just to make sure the cut marks are. That'd be good.
The evidence of large amounts of butchered animal bones, especially sheep, seal and pig, points to people living and cooking in the cave. This is consistent with the smuggler's hideaway theory, but doesn't explain why we've got human bones. It looks like we may have to take the story of Sawney Bean more seriously. With all of our attention focused on the archaeology, I've not had much time to look at the natural formations inside the cave.
Yeah. This is an intriguing cave. It's what we call a fault-bounded cave. And that's because it's got great big fractures running down the side of it. And it's a bit like pulling up a deck of cards. When you bring up a deck of cards, some of them drop out from below. That's what's happened to the roof of this cave. And well, there you go. There's a classic example. Look at that. Straight off the roof of the cave, just collapsed down on itself. Yeah, and that's a bit worrying because this stuff here, I think, appears, yeah, it looks more recent, and that could be hiding some important archaeological information.
The back of the cave is completely blocked with a steep slope of spoil and huge boulders. This 60-degree mud slope rising up to the ceiling could be relatively recent, the result of a roof collapse and water seepage from above. Before we investigate or excavate, I need to look at Meg's survey of the main chamber. The radar scan shows the position and alignment of the culvert quite clearly, but there's no sign of a buried floor surface. This either means the floor is deeper than 2 meters, or that the floor was made of compacted mud and invisible to radar.
Jimmy, have you loaded in the GIS?
Yeah, well, we've got most of the information in there now. We started off with the OS information, so we've just got the basic map. So let's turn on the buildings.
This enables us to view the caves from a variety of angles and with a variety of data. These red horizontal lines are contours, measuring depth or altitude. By manipulating the image so we can see underneath the caves and castle, we can easily see how the caves undercut the building above. The contour lines show that the sloping back wall of the main chamber has 2 high points, which look like they're only a few meters beneath the castle foundations. Could this be evidence that the caves and castle were once connected by secret passages? It's almost 20 meters up the mud slope to the roof of the chamber.
Right, Meg, I brought you to the top of the caving system. I've just looked at the Cyrax information with the GIS, and the cave system comes up underneath the castle. And one thing I want us to try and establish is that there is no hidden passages, apparently with mythology, that used to come up inside the cave. Now, you're going to love this. Can you run the GPR on the back walls of the cave?
On these back walls?
On these, please,
This very nice slope. Well, sure, we can run the radar anywhere.
Okay, so if you could do it on this back wall and the other 2 chambers, and then we can eradicate that.
Whenever you are ready, go ahead.
Ready. What's that? Cable.
In order to get any worthwhile results from the survey, the high-frequency scanner has to be kept in contact with the slope's surface. Not easy when the mud wall is almost vertical in places. This is obviously going to take some time.
Okay, come on back up.
Back at the front of the cave, I've got stuck into the culvert.
Hey, Katie, I think there's a whole load of bones.
If you go in there it's about a foot on the right-hand side, and there's a load of spiders' eggs on the left, so keep your head towards the right.
Oh, it looks like one of those vertebrae that we had yesterday. It looks like the same kind of shape, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it where I found it, and then I think Alice should come and have a look.
All right, well, we'll come out. Alice!
We need to make sure it's not a whole skeleton.
Come over here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just down to the right then.
Just up about 2 feet.
I think one of them, it just looks like one of them looks really similar to the one that we found yesterday. Can you see anything down there?
Yeah, there's... Oh, right, yeah. Oh, this one here.
That's it?
Yeah, it's another human vertebra.
Can you bring it closer?
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah.
But there's loads of other bones there. Can you see if they're human as well? Because we really need to establish whether we're looking at a whole skeleton now.
There's all bits and pieces. There's another bit of vertebra there. I'm not sure if that's human. Another bit there. I mean, it certainly doesn't look as though there's an articulated skeleton here.
Right.
That's a snail shell.
This is really important now. We've got to establish whether these human bones are earlier than this culvert or not.
Well, my gut feeling is that when I was excavating it, I was going into underneath the wall, the lining of the culvert itself.
So it is looking earlier.
But
those bones up there, they were actually above the culvert. This is what is really strange.
We've now got evidence of human remains from 2 parts of the same chamber. One from above the culvert, and the other from deep inside. With no obvious signs of pathology, it's not apparent how they died. We found no associated archaeology, so we don't know when they died. We don't even know how they got in here.
Oh, it's a bit unstable, this.
It's our last day in the Culzean Caves, and we still finding human bones inside the culvert.
You right,
It's time to start retrieving them.
I think this is probably the most uncomfortable position I've ever been in.
Well, all the digging that you've done, that's the worst.
I think all these finds are coming out actually inside the culvert.
Inside it, so they've been washed down from the top.
Yeah, so that skeleton bone, that human bone has actually come inside the culvert.
Yeah.
It's been washed down from somewhere.
Yeah.
So do you think it would be associated with the trench up further from this?
Can't possibly say. All we can do is look at the age of that individual and the age of the person that was up above.
Yeah.
In the other trench, and then you know, if they're roughly the same age, then there's a possibility they're the same person. There's a really high concentration of bones in here.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a quick look, Meg?
Yeah, sure, it'd be great.
Come on, let's get you out there, because we got to get cracking.
Yeah.
Katie, do you need to do anything else in there documenting?
I've just got to finish doing my planning and then we can go.
Okay.
You want your spoon back?
Twist your body, that's it.
Oh my god!
Do you see all the bone?
Oh wow, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's packed in there.
Yeah.
It looks...
Can you see if you can do a bit of troweling around there? Because I can't...
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't carry on.
Wow, that is so cool.
But what we haven't established yet is where on earth have those human bones come from? I mean, some of them are inside the culvert and some of them have been outside.
I mean, I can understand the stuff inside the culvert. That's been washed down from up there, but...
From somewhere else.
Yeah, the mystery to me is how the vertebrae got onto the surface at the top.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the only thing that I can think of is that during the construction of the culvert or the construction of some other wall or pit or something, somebody has churned up the human bones.
But I mean, about what age are we looking at? Predating the culvert construction?
Well, yeah, if you think about it, all the layers below this culvert are earlier than the culvert.
So what are we looking at?
Well,
Bronze
it could be
Age
Bronze
or...
Age, Neolithic, we really don't know. I mean, if you think about it, this cave is the perfect location for prehistoric people to be living in. I think the only thing that we can do is get these carbon-14 dated and get a real definite date.
Meg, I think it's time to swap over. You got a tooth?
Yeah.
Okay, pass it out then, girl.
I don't know whose it is.
Here you go. Let's have a look.
It's a long tooth.
I think that's a human tooth.
With all of the archaeology removed from the bottom culvert trench, we need to turn our attention to the upper trench, where nothing, apart from the initial surface bones, have been found. Even with the capstones removed, the drain is devoid of finds, but the massive structure of the culvert is becoming apparent. This is a serious piece of engineering.
It's quite a substantial culvert, isn't it?
Yeah, look at the size of the stones they've used to construct this. Absolutely massive.
Do you think it's anything to do with the fortification?
It's really difficult to tell at the moment. They are very well constructed, as are the fortification walls there. But look how much higher we are from the entranceway there. I mean, it's probably about 3 meters higher. Although you might expect that with the culvert, that it's constructed high up and then runs down so that the flow of the water.
It comes as no surprise because, you know, you're right on a great big fault line here, and this calcium accretion that's on the fault plane itself, you know, that's indicative of quite a lot of water flowing down through it. So would that be to do with the current castle or the earlier?
It's so difficult to tell at the moment. We still haven't really got any dating evidence. We've got a little bit of animal bone has turned up above it, and the human bone. But what we really need to do is actually lift the stones, go inside the culvert and hopefully find some dating evidence there. Okay. And then if the worst comes to the worst, we can actually take out some of these boulders and go underneath it as well and try and find some more dating evidence.
We've almost run out of excavation time, and we've still got a lot of loose ends to tie up. As all of our heavy equipment makes its long journey back up top, Meg needs to finish off her survey of the caves. In the top trench, Alice has finally worked out an archaeological sequence for the culvert.
I'm quite pleased because this enormous stone here suggests to me that we're not just looking at the side of the culvert, we're actually looking at something which might continue on. I think that it's actually a nice big flat stone that's part of a floor surface which is carrying on
under the section.
Under the section, right. Yeah. I think that this stone here is part of the series that are actually the capstones for the top of the culvert, and what we're seeing here is just the edge of the floor surface.
Oh, right, okay.
And then the culvert just forms a ditch at the side of it.
And what else have we got in this trench then?
Yeah, well, what we've got here is basically the wall carrying on down quite deep. We've dug down fairly deep, and you can see these big blocks, and that one there is the base of it, because that's just lying on clay at the bottom. And I haven't been able to find a cut for it, and my feeling is that there wasn't a cut for it and that the wall hasn't been sunk into the floor. What's actually happened is that the wall was constructed, and then all of this floor which is built up here has literally built up against the wall.
Against the wall.
Yeah. The other thing I think is that some of the wall has fallen down, and we've got some rubble down here, and then the culvert stones seem to be lying on top of that.
Right, so the sequence is wall partly collapses, then build the culvert, cover it, and then possibly with the floor heading off across the quay.
I think so, yeah.
Fantastic.
I think that's what's going on.
What we haven't been able to find out is where the culvert starts. We know it's heading to the back of the cave under the mud slope, where Meg carried out her radar scan. But the results are disappointing. Instead of any voids that may once have been secret passages to the castle above, all we can see is a jumble of rocks and mud, consistent with a quite recent roof collapse. This collapse could have been as recent as the 18th century, from the time when Robert Adam was building the modern castle. We know from documentary sources that he used dynamite to level the site in the previous castle. Could the explosions above have dislodged the roof of the caves below? I've worked out that the mud slope consists of over 700 tons of spoil, more than enough to completely bury nearly 200 square metres of the cave. This explosive theory could explain why Chamber 3 is almost full of spoil. It also goes a long way to explain why the pillars in Chamber 2 were constructed, to prevent any further collapse.
In terms of this structure then, Derek, what have we got?
Well, you can see quite clearly that the column here is coming down, and it's actually just sitting on a hard surface. There's no real solid foundation to this at all, so it's not a very well built structure. We thought that from its construction anyway.
Yeah.
But you can see it's sitting on this layer, which actually continues all the way across. It's all this yellow, sort of burnt red colour as well. So it's actually been fired. This has been a big fire here. We did get a layer of charcoal on the top of this. So it's either we think it's either the base of some sort of structure, like an oven or something, or it's something wider, like a floor surface. So there's been quite a substantial floor surface in the cavern at one point. Well, what's quite interesting as well is we've got this, having got this surface, what's below it, we have all these mixed deposits of rubble and stone. In fact, you can see, big bits of animal bones sticking out through here.
Yeah.
It's all mixed. There's a lot of shell and things in there as well. What date that is, we don't know. But we think this, 18th century pillar could be medieval surface, maybe goes with the walls on the outside. Underneath that, what we're looking at, Dark Age, maybe.
Really?
Maybe back to prehistory. So we really need to have a look and get some decent artefacts out of this.
We got to get it. Well, we run out of time, so I'll just leave you get on with it.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
These burnt areas are always really, really useful for archaeologists because they contain all sorts of things like little bits of bone, little fragments of burnt seeds, which gives us an insight into what these people were eating as well.
Katie's opened a small trench on the other side of the pillar to find one piece of definitive dating evidence.
Right on the surface here, in this spot, we've been finding bits of green glazed pottery, which is dated to the medieval period. And this is exactly the kind of evidence that we're looking for occupation during the time of smuggling.
Late medieval cooking and storage pots, which takes our story full circle, back to the smugglers. So does this mean that the human bones are the remains of dead smugglers, or their victims? There's one last surprise in the pillar trench.
Well, there's a lot of animal bone coming out, domestic animals, so it's what we'd expect. But then there's also this as well.
Which is a...
Human bone.
Really?
That is actually a human vertebra. The other thing about it, which is quite interesting, is that it is actually a juvenile. You can see the creases where the arch at the back is just fusing with the body, or it's almost fused, and the tips also are not fully formed yet. Now, this means it's juvenile. It's not as young as the child vertebra that I found, so we're now looking at least three individuals. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But when we had the bones radiocarbon dated, they turned out to be much earlier than anyone expected. 855 AD, almost 600 years earlier than the smugglers. This proves something we had already suspected, that the bones were buried here in antiquity. Now, we can finally piece together the human story of the caves. 1,200 years ago, they were open rock shelters large enough to be the likely home of a small community. We found evidence of at least 3 individuals, 2 of whom were buried in the floor of the main chamber. The identity of these cave dwellers is lost to history. We've now no way of knowing why or when they left the caves. In the 15th century, when the first recorded castle was built, the cave entrances were fortified. Internal walls were constructed, along with a culvert to drain away the water and waste. The digging of the culvert accidentally disinterred the 9th century cave burials, the bones being mixed up with the stone and the spoil. So who knows what mysteries are still buried beneath the castle caves? And what of Sawney Bean, our chief suspect? It turns out he's just a figment of an early historian's overactive imagination.